Creativity Speaker Series. My name is Isabel Jagoe. I'm the manager for DC Labs. And today I'm delighted to introduce Adam Gill, who's our speaker. His company is called Vidaveo and they're based in York. So over the past several years, Adam has sort of specialized in emerging forms of video, particularly 360 video. He's a really good friend to the digital creativity community here at the University of York. He's worked with DC Labs and XR Stories, and a number of individuals will know him well. And he's also worked with some of the most innovative production companies in the Yorkshire region. Today, Adam's going to tell us a bit about his career path. He's going to touch on some of his recent projects and talk about maybe the opportunities and challenges of working in emerging technologies and video. Now, I will say we're just trying a slightly different format today. So we're going to have more of a sort of informal, illustrated discussion, I would say, between the two of us, rather than a more formal talk. There's going to be lots of room for questions for Adam. If you have questions, could you please put them into the Q&A tab? You'll see that down at the bottom of your screen. And we'll do the best to cover as many of those as we can. And just to let everybody know that we are recording this talk. So if you've got a little screen that's popped up, can you please click OK to proceed with recording? Okay. Lovely. So Adam, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And just to kick things off, maybe in your own words, perhaps you could just tell us briefly what it is that you do. I know that you work in new forms of video. What sorts of forms of video do you use, and what do they let you do as a videographer?
I've got a background in traditional video production, as it were, you know, in broadcast television, things like that. But in the past few years, I've been concentrating on 360 video. And I'm sure most people know what it is who are attending, but just in case they don't, you know, I'll just recap. It's a form of video which is a spherical format, allows you to sort of access the images through a headset frequently, but also through phones and desktop computers and things like that, to give an illusion of being there, being in the location. And most web browsers now support like 360, whether it's YouTube or Facebook and things like that. So it's possible to sort of access these relatively easily nowadays. You don't have to have a headset, and it offers a kind of sense of scale, allowing you to take your audience somewhere extraordinary, somewhere it's hard to reach or difficult to visualize, and it can help an audience understand a space, allowing them to appreciate the uniqueness of a location, a place that's possibly difficult to reach or normally inaccessible. And the kind of experiences that I'm creating, I try to make them a bit more interactive and not just sort of viewing a space. And because your audience isn't only watching your story, they're experiencing it. You supplement that with like spatialized audio to help direct an audience's attention within the sphere, or a virtual presenter. You could put a virtual presenter in there who can direct you around a location and showing you points of interest, or if it was a story, actually you could have actors within that sort of space. It's many of the skills I've developed over my career in video production. They also apply to the 360 process. But it's important to remember when you're working in 360, you're not just making a video, you are creating an experience. So that's really where it differs.
That's great. Thank you, Adam. I'd like to just touch on, you know, if you could tell us about what's been your sort of career progression. Did you start out studying film? Like, how did you get to where you are today?
Well, I started out as a cartoonist animator. I got a job initially with the Society for the Deaf in Glasgow, where I was their information officer, and I was combining illustrations with bits of text, giving them fairly sort of standard information, because there's frequently issues around literacy within the deaf community, if they're prelingually deaf, that is. And but I realized quite quickly that the best medium to sort of communicating with deaf people would probably be video. as they use sign, well, a lot of people in the deaf community use sign language. So I started creating sign language videos, and I added subtitles, little animations, things like that. And I went on to do a degree in directing, producing, and post-producing. It was a postgraduate degree, I should say, up at the Duncan of Jordanstone College of Art in Dundee. Following that, I got a couple of interesting projects, one with Canal Plus and Worldwide Fund for Nature, to produce a sort of fairly long form animation. It was fairly early days there. I was using fairly sort of crude sort of computer animation. And at the same time, I was working at the Glasgow School of Art, running their moving image department. But then I got my first job in television. I was based in Italy, so I never really returned to Scotland permanently, you know, not on a full-time basis. You know, the weather and the food got me, what can I say? And the work. I got very heavily involved in live broadcast and worked in creative departments for a variety of television companies, including the BBC, Discovery Channel, Disney, Sky, and Al Jazeera News Channel. I traveled around the world quite a lot, working in Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and in the US, this kind of thing. And I returned to York in 2016, and that's when I made contact with DC Labs, exploring the new technology, attending a lot of the kind of webinars put on by the University of York.
And I think it was when you were starting to make contact with the University of York, you began working on the mind hopping project. Is that right? Can you tell us a bit about that?
That's right. I've been working with, I've been with the, following some of the kind of hackathons that the DC Labs had put on in conjunction with the University of York. I started talking to various people from DC Labs, and one of the things that came out of this was this concept, this technique of mind hopping. The idea being that you actually film a meeting between people, say a scene between, say, 3 people, and you show it from a variety of perspectives, but the user can select which perspective they want to see it from. And when they choose that perspective, they not only see that person's perspective, but they can hear that person's inner monologue. And they can also, if they turn around within their head, as it were, they can have a look at the subconscious, the thoughts, the subconscious thoughts that go behind what they're talking about. I do have some sort of examples here of the kind of thing I was talking about. Shall I put that on?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, oops, if I just find that. I've actually gone out of order from what I was planning, but but that's okay. So here we have. I'll just try and put this full screen.
Who were you working with on mind hopping? Because I know it's a research project.
It was a research and development project funded by the XR Stories, which would. I couldn't have done it without it. And in fact, that really did start me down this road of exploring 360.
Right.
So if I just try and put you on to share the screen. Okay. Oops. Can you see that now?
Yes.
Okie dokie. So this is starting halfway through a scene, but it gives you an idea of how it works.
Man, you were in the army, were you? Well, unfortunately, I didn't get the chance. Flat feet, you see. In them days, they wouldn't let you in the services with flat feet. Crying shame. No, I was a desk warrior, pushing paper for Her Majesty.
In the War Office, working with Churchill in the bunker. Must have been.
In them days, they wouldn't let you in the forces with flat feet. Crying shame. No, I was a desk warrior, pushing paper for Her Majesty.
In the War Office, were you? Working with Churchill in the bunker. Listening to London being bombed while you were safe and sound underground.
God knows that wasn't what I wanted. Flat feet? I know it sounds lame, but they had their rules. But they were great times, exciting times. That was when I met Margaret.
Not exactly the front line.
Okay.
Not exactly yomping around the Falklands.
He's laughing at.
So Was that okay? Did you? Were you
Yeah,
able to
yeah,
get
it gives a sense of it for sure.
So what you were looking at there was a recording of through the Oculus headset. So that's why the movement they weren't camera movements. That's the user looking around the scene, you know, just to give you an idea of how you can look around within the scene. And in this case, you're able to select which of those people you wanted to sort of tune into.
Great. Well, that segues nicely into my next question, actually, because I know lots of our listeners will be interested in what sort of tech do you use at the moment. I'm particularly keen to know how you managed to do 360 video on drones. We talked about that before, but maybe you can just tell folks, what cameras do you typically use? What's your setup?
Well, the main camera is this one here. I'll put up a picture of that. I'll share that as an image so you can see it clearer. This is, oops, sorry, oops, where am I? Got it. So you can see that now, that picture, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the camera that I bought during the XR Stories research. It's an Insta Pro 360, and it's got 6 lenses to it. And the thing that's perched on its head, a bit like a magic hat or something like that, is actually a microphone. It's a spatial audio microphone. And you can see the kind of picture on the right. That's the kind of setup I would normally have in a public space like that. I wouldn't normally put it on a tripod, but because there's a chance someone may come near it, it's more stable than a monopod. And because that kind of camera, it doesn't really, it doesn't see below itself so much. So you can actually wipe out the tripod quite simply in post-production. Obviously, you can see it's quite a large camera. I'll just stop sharing now. And what I would do if you were using a drone or something like that, I would use a much smaller camera, something like this. Here, I'll just take its little cover off so you can, and I'll turn it on so you can see what it is. This is still an Insta camera, but you get lots of different types of cameras. You know, you get a GoPro or something like this. And you can see the difference between this one and the one behind me is that this has got 2 lenses as opposed to that one, which has 6. It's also a lower resolution. The one behind me is 8K, so it's very high resolution. This one is 5.7, which is still pretty good. But it's definitely lower resolution than that once you spread it out across the 360. But the same applies to both these. You can hang this from a drone, you know, upside down. It really doesn't matter which way up it is. You can change that in post, and you get to see a little screen there. But I won't bother showing you the screen just now because that's not what we're really doing. I'm really just showing you the size of it. And you can control these from your phone. You normally put, for the bigger camera at least, you would fit this phone into this, and that communicates directly to the camera. So you can hide away basically because you don't want to be in the shot. You can hide behind things. If you didn't have this transmitter, you'd be restricted to line of sight or just about line of sight. And that's much more difficult because the Wi-Fi would keep cutting out and things like that.
Adam, there's a quick question here from Zulfia just about your smaller camera. She says, is the smaller one also called the Insta 360?
It's an Insta Pro 2X.
Okay.
This one's, you can't get the Pro 1X anymore because it's been superseded by this one. And it costs about £400, I think, something like that. So it's actually sort of far more kind of accessible than this one, for instance, which actually costs more like £4,000 or £5,000, you know. But something like this is fantastic for, particularly if you want to go out and about things using like a selfie stick or something like that, or attaching to a drone. You get a little harness to attach it to the drone. But these what they call an invisible selfie stick. They call it invisible because the camera itself can't see, has a blind spot underneath it and can't even see you holding it. It's quite amazing really because it just shows your hand underneath. So technically, this is the kind of gear I use. Oh, and I'll just show you the, this is the spatial audio recorder.
Does that go with the smaller camera?
No, generally, well, you record it independently. Whatever your scene is, you can record this. You can plug in a microphone. Well, actually, I record the microphones separately if they've got radio mics and things like this. This records using these various microphones at the top and gives you a 360 sounds, surround sound kind of thing. And along with that, I will then record pieces of dialogue independently using lapel mics or boom. Well, actually, you can't really use a boom mic in that kind of setting. But that allows me to then lay those independent sacs over the spatial audio later, and I have to then position them in that 360 space. So
how much does the spatial audio kit cost? Once
again, I can't remember specifically, but it's a matter of a few £100 rather than thousands. I'm at a guess. I seem to remember it costs like £400 or £500.
So somebody could, in theory, kind of get started with 700 or 800 quid. They could
maybe 1,000, something like that. Okay. Once you've got all the other various bits and pieces, yeah, you could get started. Obviously, attaching these to drones and things, you're restricted by all the restrictions around using drones in general.
Great. Oh, that is really interesting. Okay. So I think you mentioned needing to stay out of shot, and I think that's one of the tricky things with doing 360 video, isn't it? You were telling me a story about working at the Jorvik Center. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that from the perspective of some of the challenges of getting set up and taking good video.
Yes, actually, you've just reminded me. I need to get that up on here. I'll get the video up so you can see what it's about. I'm just loading it up through my website, actually. If you need to see this, or if you want to see this later, you can just go to my website, which is literally just vidaveo.com. And if I set this up, but there, I've got it. But I'll just tell you a little, here, I'll show it to you first.
Okay.
And that way you'll understand what I'm talking about. So I'll share the screen again. Sorry, oh, there we are, got it. So it's this one here, the Jorvik Center. Frequently it shows you in low resolution to start with, and you have to change the settings.
Hello there!
It says
look behind you. Turn your device so you can see me. Hello, that's better. Hello there. My name is Stuart, known to some as the Pear Bear, but you can call me by my Viking name.
I'll just move it on a little bit.
It means stern wolf.
So just to give you an idea of
on the left with the long hair.
So you can move the screen around like this
the Vikings
when you're inside it,
as they called them, thralls.
And frequently I put in graphics like this. Hold on,
You're probably thinking, have I gone mad? No, the Vikings were a very, very clean people.
So that's me just moving it around.
A special day of the week for washing. It's called Lorgadaga, or Wash Day.
Oh, there you go. So there's the occasional graphic that pops up in it and things like that.
That's the day of the week.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing that. That's just to give you an idea of what that particular project was about. Probably many of you know that at the Jorvik Center, they have this time capsule that follows a track. And the problems with it are a few different things. One is it's pretty dark. So the video you saw there was shot in almost complete darkness, apart from the exhibitions that were lit up, and they're not lit up highly. So that shows you how responsive this particular camera is, whereas the little one would not have been able to cope with that. But the difficulties were that there's a lot of electronic equipment around there, which interferes with the wireless. So the recording, I couldn't view it very easily using this transmitter because it kept breaking up. So I was actually hiding in some of the capsules, like 2 capsules back. So I was out of the way and I was lying on the floor kind of thing, monitoring it as we were going along. And also, what were the other difficulties with that? Well, those were the principal ones. Also, the fact that it wobbles; those time capsules wobbled quite a lot. So luckily, these cameras both have quite good internal stabilization. I don't want to dwell too much on the sort of technical side of things because every camera is different anyway. But the experience generally is that you have to sort of hide from the camera once you've set it up. You have to trust the actors. The actors have to be very sort of confident with their lines. It's difficult to sort of break a scene in 360. Because you haven't got the same options of doing cutaways that you would in a normal sort of narrative situation using traditional video. You can't cut away to, you know, someone's glass or the other person or something like that. Everything is in shot. So that's probably the main issue.
That's great. Thank you very much. We're going to move on now to another project, the Port of Time, or Port of Tyne, right?
Port of Tyne, yeah.
And the reason I wanted to ask you about this project, I think you might maybe have some illustrations of this as well, is talking about, okay, with 360 video, when is it particularly appropriate? What are the best sort of commercial applications? And again, coming back to that particular project.
Well, I'm pushing more towards the sort of creative narrative storytelling sort of, that's my new direction that I'm going in. But I'm also considering the sort of commercial applications of 360. And I've been working with a company based in the Science Park in York, Marisis, and to develop a template effectively for an app so that we can create a 360 experience quite easily by shooting the necessary content and by dropping it into this app and then tailoring the branding to that company's images, you know, the kind of logos and such like they want to. And we created, as a demo, we went up to the Port of Tyne, which is in Newcastle, very big shipping port. And it's amongst other things, it's creating a green energy center there where they'll be, putting wind farms and things out to sea and things like that. But we created this little demo. I'll just show you an extract of it. Again, I'll share this screen with you if that's all right.
Yep.
And you'll get an idea of what it's like. It's not, I want to just to stress that this is not a finished product. This is a work in progress. And particularly, I want it to be much more kind of immersive right from the start. I want to reduce it. I want to make it look less like a website and more like an immersive experience. So here it is. It's this little window here. Can you see that okay? Like as if my phone.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. So this is taken directly from from my phone. This is a recording directly from my phone. So what you're looking at is me going through the menus in real time. I haven't edited this down for speed or anything. And the important thing is, I'm just showing people that you can look through the articles if you want, and then you can click on watch video. And then you'll get a piece of 360. And the kind of images you're looking at there, that's me moving the phone around whilst the app is playing. And you'll have things like this truck comes along with an information dot on it, which you can click on, and things will pop up. At other points throughout the experience, you'll have someone pop up like this. And when you click on that,
The Port of Tyne is one of the most innovative and efficient deep-sea ports in the UK, servicing cargoes from around the globe.
So that's me just looking off to the left and right, just to show you that that's what the viewer would see.
We're connected to major sea routes, roads, and rail infrastructure.
Okay, I'll just pause it there.
So am I right that the user can look left and right as they're watching?
They can look anywhere. They can look down at their feet. They can look up at the crane. They can follow the trucks as they go by. Mm-hmm. And at various points, you get different perspectives of the port. There is a kind of, within that little experience, there's also a much more conventional kind of virtual tour of the port, where with the kind of thing where you just click on an arrow and it takes you to the next still image, but still a 360. But the idea is to make it much more interactive, so that people could, if, for instance, if this same sort of technique was used in a heritage situation, they could be exploring within an old house. They could look at a bit of furniture which you couldn't normally examine. They could open drawers. They could take out artifacts, probably things that have been scanned with photogrammetry and then reconstructed as actual items. They can turn them around, look at them. Maybe even we would include gamification elements, so that the user would be much more kind of compelled to sort of keep looking, keep searching, and extend their experience.
Very good, thank you very much. So listeners, I encourage you to start putting some questions into Q&A, because we'll be able to sort of come to your questions very shortly. Adam, first I wanted to ask you about, what are you working on at the moment? What exciting projects have you got coming up in the future?
It's been a very busy start to the year, and it's great. It looks like, I know COVID's not gone, but things are definitely opening up again a bit more. And I'm working in collaboration with a couple of companies. One's called Immersive Reality. They're based down near Huddersfield, and they create virtual spaces, actual physical virtual spaces. And I've been creating content for them, but we're also developing various interactive narrative projects for, at this moment, they're for children with special needs who may have difficulty sort of going out in public. So these kind of spaces are great for them. They can actually interact with scenarios that even something as simple as going to the shop, or it can be something a bit more exciting like going for a ride on a fire engine or something like that. And they can interact with these by with motion detectors and hotspots, which give them information about what they're looking at, what they're experiencing. So that's one company I'm working with, and another one is they're called Diva. I'm collaborating with them to develop their new kind of virtual offerings. We've got quite a lot of ideas that we're working on, which are much more kind of creative, narrative, storytelling pieces rather than for commercial projects.
Any sort of examples of, or you're not at liberty to say?
I can't really say it. I can't tell you at the moment, because of these non-disclosure and so on like that, because they are in development.
Okay, all right.
But suffice to say that they've already released what they call their geo stories. These are audio experiences. And they released one about, it's called In the Footsteps of Bram Stoker. It's based in Whitby, and it's basically a new take on the whole Dracula story. And if you go to Whitby and you follow the story using your phone, it creates a very atmospheric piece in each location, then directs you to the next location to take up the next piece of the story and things like that. So it's not entirely, but we are building on that. It's not the same, obviously, but we're building on their initial experiences, and we're hoping to sort of create experiences which are rich both in audio experience and visual.
Very good, thank you. So I've got a couple of questions have come in. So the first is asking about, I think, video format. The question is what is the format? Is it MP4? How do you publish videos online? So maybe a little about, your formats and publishing process.
Sure, it's very actually, it's relatively straightforward editing if you want to make it straightforward. The stitching, which was always an issue in the past, the stitching being because there's 6 cameras there, and each one's taking a different image, and they're created so they overlap slightly. But you need a piece of software which will help you stitch these 6 images in this case, or 2 in the case of the smaller one, together to make it a seamless image, in theory, seamless. But there's always kind of little artifacts you need to kind of attend to. But nowadays, the AI kind of software that these people, you know, Insta and GoPro and people like that have created, it makes that stitching much easier. So you can pretty much take your images straight into Premiere or something like that, which is a fairly industry standard piece of software. And within that, you can look at through the what some people call the little magic window. So you can look at it in 360 as you're editing it, and just through a little window on it, as it were. But then you can output it using some of the standard formats, which are sort of within Premiere for 360. I would have to look them up to remember exactly what they are, but honestly, it's quite easy, and they are a kind of MP4. But when you look at them on as kind of standard viewer, you know, QuickTime or something like that, it'll just play it as the flat image, unraveled, as it were. So you have to, but when you import it to Facebook or to YouTube or Vimeo or something like that, it will then recognize that it's 360, and it'll play it back as that. So like I say, I would have to look up the details of what my export is. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. I'm looking up here just in case I've got it noted down somewhere. No, I don't.
Okay, not to worry, not to worry. So moving on, there's a question here from Marian Ursu, maybe about on the sort of more research side, I think. So in telling stories in 360, is there a recurring problem that you've encountered that you could not solve but wished you had a solution for? Maybe conceptual or in writing or production. So could be any of these aspects.
Well, the way scenes have to be written, they definitely need to be more, you have to take into mind that you can't cut away from the actors. And so you have to allow a certain degree of latitude with the interpretation of a piece of dialogue. This is my experience of it anyway, is that you don't necessarily sort of hold them to the script. You sort of say, this is where you've got to start, this is where you've got to finish. These are the things. I mean, I write the script so they understand what it's about, but you do rely on having good actors to not just memorize it, but also internalize what am I doing here? And so they have to really live it. And so do all the other actors who are in the scene, because they're in shot the whole time as well. So they have to be in character every moment, you know? And so if one of them falls out of character, even for the moment, and I don't know, glances off to the side or something like that, you have to shoot that scene again. And that's why I'm saying you really want them to be able to sort of memorize or internalize the scene, not just the dialogue. Yeah, so I would say that was one of the main things.
Does that mean that you're trying to do shorter scenes?
I'm trying not to compromise too much. It puts a lot of pressure on the actors, but if they, in my humble opinion, if it's in their blood, acting, they will embrace that as an opportunity. It's like being on stage, you know, because that's really what it is. It's somewhere between conventional filming and being in the theater or something like that. So you try not to sort of make the scenes too short, because then a 360, oh yeah, Marian's just said this is very much like theater. Yes, exactly. Yes. And yes, it's very much like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Oh, we've got a question has just come in from Mary Stewart David. So Mary is working a lot on musicals in the sort of VR space.
Okay.
And she's asking, how do you light interiors with 360? So where do you put the lights, and
yeah,
how does the line work?
I actually really enjoy this way of working, because you have to work with a lot of practical lighting. You have to consider the space before you start filming, and you put in, as you know, the best practical lighting, things that are in the scene anyway. I'm sure most people understand what I mean by practical lighting. Practical lightings are things that you would see in, like, lights above, or a little lamp over on the table or something like that. But you need to consider that very well, because once they're in the shot, they can't really be moved unless it's part of the scene that they are moved. And so a lot of practical lighting, but also in order to sort of create a bit of kind of depth to a shot, I might discreetly sort of hide small lights behind bits of furniture or something like that. So it kind of gives at least a suggestion of the form of the furniture, or detail if you're wanting to sort of highlight that. But you have to be able to hide it away from the camera, and also make it so it's not too obvious what's happening there. And in terms of crossing the line, the line, you don't worry about the conventional line. The things you do think about, and actually became obvious to me as I was shooting that mind-hopping piece, was that you don't want the viewer to be sort of going, who said that? What said that? You know, and moving all the time. So you have to block it out. So, you know, if there's 3 people, you actually need to group them together in a way that it's fairly natural for you as the viewer to be viewing it as if you were the 4th person, and if you were part of the conversation, as it were. So you're looking around them like that, and there's not someone behind you, unless that's what the effect you're going for, where suddenly someone bursts through the door and you have to turn around and go, what? Something like that. So in terms of the line, you know, there's not a specific line. There are considerations of, you need to keep people a certain distance, a natural distance away from the camera, because if they're too up close, when the person's viewing it in a headset or even on a desktop or whatever, they're kind of in your face and much too close, you know. So you have to keep them a natural, more natural distance. And you also have to consider, but that's actually a good thing, because that helps with the stitching that I was talking about earlier. You know, it helps avoid those kind of issues.
That's interesting. I think this naturally leads on to actually Zulfia's question. So I'm going to go to that one next. What's your about filming in real life? What's your experience about filming 360 in documentary mode, where you don't have actors, but you're filming reality, or you're filming people's real lives? So any thoughts on how you navigate or plan the shoot in that sort of context? Has that come up for you?
I haven't done a lot of strictly documentary pieces. I've done a lot of kind of what I call ambient pieces, you know, like I say, at the fire station and things like that, where I'm getting them to go around and look at the fire engine, for instance. You know, I'm trying to remember how I handled that exactly. I'm thinking, yeah, I know what I did. I actually gave one of the firemen, the guy who was leading it, I gave him the camera to hold. I used the small one on a selfie stick, and he actually held it as he was going around. And because of the internal stabilization on these things, it actually worked very well. You know, he was able to sort of go around looking at the stuff and, you know, asking questions of the other guys, what are you doing now? Or have you checked this? Have you checked that? And it didn't look too unnatural, the fact that because you don't see the camera or the selfie stick, you just see his closed fist like that. And so long as he's not waving the camera around crazily, if he's just moving it around, it worked out fine. You can also do things like sort of, I was working at a trampoline park, and I actually put this camera again on the selfie stick in a backpack whilst the people were on the trampoline and things like that. And he could do somersaults, he could play basketball, you know, this kind of thing, all with it on his back. It makes the viewer feel a bit queasy, I have to say, because it's a very strange sensation when you're not actually. And in fact, I was thinking that the best way of viewing that would be if you were actually standing on a trampoline yourself, so you got a bit of the sensation.
Presumably, when you're doing that, where then you, the videographer, have to hide.
Yes, you need to get yourself out of view, so long as you don't make yourself too kind of conspicuous. Because these cameras are a very wide angle, you can actually hide in a crowd or something like that. So you can actually be viewing it, but you don't look directly at the camera. You'll be looking at your little monitor. It just looks like you're on your thing, on your phone. But you, obviously, if I appear in it every time, you know, they'll soon start going, who's that bald guy who's in every shot, you know? So you do generally try to sort of hide yourself away. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Let's see, another question from Marion here. Apart from moving the viewing perspective, have you experimented at all with other forms of audience interaction? I'm wondering what you had in mind here.
Well, I'm working on some things at the moment where you can select different characters within the scene, and you can activate them, as it were. They're not just, you're not seeing it from their perspective, but if you click on them, they suddenly become active, and they'll start interacting in a way that they wouldn't have before you clicked on them, if you know what I mean. And so it's not changing the perspective, it's changing their behavior, I would say. But this is something that I'm just working on at the moment.
Yeah. Another one from Mary here. I know you'd said that you can't really sort of pull away or change the...
No.
So she's asking, is there a way that you can cut in reaction shots? How does depth of field work?
Yeah.
To maybe pull focus. Is that something you can do?
It's generally a bit weird if you try and put in the action shots. You try and work it into the script as much as anything. And in terms of depth of field, I've played around with that by putting kind of fake kind of post-production depths of fields on things to draw your attention to things. And it has worked to a certain extent, and definitely requires a lot more experimentation. But in terms of the action shots, it's not impossible to put in something which is a little suggestive, like if someone's talking about the teapot or something like that, maybe you would put in a close-up of the table with the tea shot, with the teacup and the tea set and everything, but it would be a bit jarring for the person who's actually viewing it. Yeah.
Maybe you need to alert using audio prompts or something like that to encourage you to look in a particular area.
And in the mind hopping one, that's kind of what I was trying to do. I was giving them visual clues about, okay, you can click onto this character now, and then the transition between one character and the next, or one scene, one view and the next, was that little tunnel effect, so that it didn't just abruptly sort of change, you know. That was my thinking behind it.
Okay. You've sort of touched on this as well, but Marion's saying, so when you're crafting a story, clearly there's a slightly different way of thinking about it.
It is, because the scene that you saw there was from a script that I wrote before I was working on the 360, and it was called The Great Beyond, and I'd written it in a very conventional style. But in order to write the script for the kind of mind hopping technique that I had to then write it from each of the different characters' perspectives, and it comes out very differently that way. So I'd be happy to sort of share those kind of the way because for that scene with those 3 characters, for instance, there were 4 scripts which differed slightly because they had their inner monologue and things in them.
I wonder if there, I mean, just talking out loud here, but if there's a body of sort of research work around storytelling craft in a sort of 360 environment versus not, you know, or it sounds like it's very much being worked out with every project.
As far as I know, but Marion might actually know better than me. You know, there probably very possibly is. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Florian's question because he put this in a little while ago, but we were sort of following a natural strand there. He's asking if you think that the current generation of prosumer cameras have sufficient resolution. What are the limitations in streaming and delivering high resolution to users?
My personal feeling is that they're amazing. You know what you can do with 360, even live streaming. Obviously, you need the sort of the bandwidth to support that. That's the main criteria. You know, because it takes up even more bandwidth than your regular streaming. And I think the cameras generally provide high enough resolution if people are going to be viewing it in, you know, social media mode, whether that's on a computer screen or, you know, on a laptop, a tablet, a phone. When you start bringing it in on as I am now looking at it on an iMac large screen, you can see a little bit of the degradation if you were going to do it like that. And definitely within a headset, you'd notice it. But if it was shot initially on a kind of higher spec camera, then you can actually reduce a lot of that noise and so on. I think it's still quite acceptable. The Jorvik one looks pretty good, even in the headset and everything. So I was quite pleased with that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But in terms of streaming, definitely it's the bandwidth that's the main issue, I think.
Okay. And another question here from Zulfia. What sort of feedback do you get from viewers? She's interested in how they might typically access 360 videos. Are they comfortable viewing them on their phones? Phones are pretty high spec now, so I imagine so.
Yeah.
How are they responding? What are their experiences with 360 storytelling?
We had a very good response from the Jorvik one. It was designed as part of an educational program, you know, or a season for the Jorvik Centre during lockdown. So we actually got a really good high number of viewers, and the issues were not around. People really enjoyed it. They could access it very straightforwardly. Most of them, I'm guessing, would view them on their phone. I think people probably need a little bit more education, just in my experience of showing it to people in person, of how to view it, basically. You know, what's the best way to sort of move your camera around or scroll it using your finger. Personally, it's a combination of both. You kind of scroll it to the sort of section you want to look, and then you kind of move it around for the finer movements like that. But that's just experience. I think people need to sort of experience and learn their own way of interacting with it. And what was I going to say? We had a good response. Oh yeah, the main issue is actually more to do with the software on your phone, you know, or the type of phone you've got. Sometimes there's glitches about, you know, the 360 will get stuck in one corner or something like that. But it's to do with the version of your phone, and you kind of generally need to upgrade it or something, you know, just upgrade your operating system, or talk to someone about, you know, the majority of people were able to watch it without issue, about 75%, I would say. You know, yeah.
So you're not needing to sort of have pre-screens saying, please use this browser, or please, you know, you don't have at this point specifying.
I do put in messages saying, if you're having problems viewing this on your phone, go to YouTube or something like that. If it's in Facebook, you know, try it on YouTube at this address, or on Vimeo, you know, that, because sometimes those different servers make the difference.
Got it. Okay. All right. Lovely. Great. Well, I think we're coming up on the end of our hour. Adam, thank you so very much. Lots of really interesting information here. And let's see, if anybody would like to pick up on specific questions and talk to Adam further, I'm sure he'd be very happy to answer emails. And I think, is it Adam@Vidaveo?
Adam@Vidaveo.com.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And if anyone forgets or can't figure it out, please just pop me an email and I will make sure to put you all in touch.
And like I say, I'm looking to work and collaborate with people on projects. So, you know, obviously it's the projects that are kind of considered, you know, and but things that are challenging the kind of medium as well, but particularly narrative. They don't necessarily have to be documentary narrative. It could be drama, this kind of thing. You know, can be fiction, but also, you know, all sorts of things. I'm open to discussion, we'll say.
Well, that's great. And I will say also, Adam is a frequent visitor to the university, so I'm sure if anyone wants to get him a coffee, he'll happily happily engage for a chat as well.
I'll do more for the Snickers bar.
Okay, all right, noted. Okay, lovely. Well, everybody, thank you very much for attending. And Adam, thank you so very much for sharing.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone for listening in.
Okay, take care.
Yes.